Hi, I'm Bill Arnold. Thank you for listening to this podcast. There are many more podcasts available at myfaithradio.com. Your support makes this possible. Thank you. Hi, this is Bill Arnold, host of the... what's the name of the show again?
Oh, don't you know, it's the Bill Arnold Show. It's Bill.
And a warm welcome to the Bill Arnold Show. Glad you joined me today. It seems like the world kind of swims in a sea of anger, and that can certainly be very harmful for us as individuals, and then it extends into families and communities and even countries. And anger, believe it or not, is meant to be a gift. It's that can't ignore it emotion. But the problem with anger is it wants to take charge. It wants to rule you. It thinks it's a renewable energy source, and that is not true. We're going to talk today to Dr. Glenn Brooke. He's written a book called Slow to Anger, Redeeming Anger as the Gift It's Meant to Be. So he is a first-time guest to the show, so everyone wave hello to Glenn. There you go, Glenn. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
You see everyone waving at you? Isn't that nice?
I'm waving back.
Good. You know, when I got your book and started reading it, I had trouble putting it down because, I think it had a lot of appeal to me with what's going on in the world and also in my life. I think men in particular have had a little bit of a slow burn when it comes to anger. But also, it was so well written and accessible, and it wasn't very long. So it fit all the things that I really like about a book.
Terrific.
Yeah.
Glad to hear it.
So if you don't mind, I would love to start talking about maybe some of the wrong ideas we have about anger. Now, I'm just going to rifle off a couple of these, and then I'll have you respond. All anger is wrong. There's no valid reason to be angry. Angry is always sinful. Godly people must be pacifists. No one in a church or congregation should ever be angry at others in the congregation ever. So what are your thoughts to some of that?
Well, I think those are easily believed by a lot of people. And sometimes we unintentionally teach kids these things, not thinking, but those are not biblical ideas at all. And I think the fact that we so easily absorb wrong things about anger makes it harder for us to think correctly about anger, how anger is a gift and what its place is in the Christian life. I mean, just for starters, in the Bible, God gets angry. Jesus gets angry. They don't sin. Moses, Nehemiah, Jeremiah, Isaiah, they all expressed significant anger, and they did so in ways that did not lead to sin. But there are lots and lots of verses about anger because it does often lead to sin because we don't treat it correctly. I mean, it starts in Genesis 4 with Cain being angry at his brother Abel, right? And God tells him, why are you angry? Sin wants to control you, it's not in character, but it wants to control you, and you must rule over it. So, I mean, it starts really early in human history. It's been a big problem ever since.
Mm-hmm. Now, Glenn, I know that you're not a trained counselor or licensed therapist, but you've got a PhD in molecular biology. And I know you ran a software development company. You've had multiple roles in large agriculture company for almost 30 years. And you've written, this is a big number, more than 1,200 articles on leadership. So you've got an incredible background. So you know what you're talking about. And when it comes to anger, I know you have confronted this within organizations throughout your history, haven't you?
Well, yes. And part of it's because I brought the anger, right?
Interesting.
Part of the reason why this book was so personal and quite a challenge to write is because anger has been something I've battled with my whole life. And I tell the story in the book at the end about how anger actually led to the greatest gift. It was really my anger that led me to get to know Jesus. Um, not not the way I would have scripted it, perhaps, but it really was in the end the ultimate gift that way. So yeah, anger it's throughout organizations, it's throughout history, and it's because and I may be jumping ahead of you. Anger is the almost impossible to describe emotion that tells us there's a gap between what should be and what is, or at least what we perceive should be and what is. And we can often be wrong in those perceptions, but it's a gift because it tells us, here's a problem or a potential problem. Think about it. What should we do?
Glenn, you profiled 10 angry people in the beginning of the book, and I thought, boy, that you're hitting on all cylinders describing these people. Let me just read a few. The guy who is secretly angry much of the time but doesn't show it.
Mm-hmm.
The man who is terrified, his anger will surface and buries it under false meekness.
Yep.
The lady told all her life that anger is from the devil and is never appropriate. The father and mother who don't know how to help their teenage son who flies into rage several times a week. Yeah, it's a complicated subject.
Yeah. And again, I think the reason I have that list, and there were more in the book, but I've been one of those people. And so,
Oh, I have too, Glenn. I mean, I saw
right.
myself, and then I saw
Yeah,
other people that I know in some of the other descriptions, and I thought, oh,
yeah,
there's a lot of us in this lineup here.
yeah. I think one that I've been running into more recently that I listed here is the guy who's depressed and numb and envies people who still give a damn about something,
Mm,
right? They're just kind of checked out.
yeah.
And um, that's a very, very challenging kind of anger to work through.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The young man who doesn't know how to control his intense emotions and hates that his anger has hurt someone.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, there's a lot of descriptors in this book, and you can identify yourself pretty quickly if you just go through that list. Let's talk about why anger is a gift, because there's going to be a lot of people that are going to think, whoa, 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 hang on, Glenn, anger's a gift?
Yeah, for many of us, we think of anger only as a curse.
Mm-hmm.
But let's take the imagination to a place. Let's imagine somebody who is totally incapable, impossible for them to ever be angry about anything. Well, what would that person be like? Well, I think they'd be passively insensitive to everything around them, including injustice, evil, horrible stuff going on in the world. That's not that's not a picture of how Jesus operated or the way the Christian life should be. And they wouldn't have much of any reason to ever intercede in prayer for somebody over where there's this horrible situation that's just wrong. They they're not going to have the energy to go out and change the world or to address injustice, evil, to reduce the suffering of others. So a person who is incapable of being angry, I think is out of step with the character of God.
I would agree. And anger is really, like you say, it's meant to be a gift with a useful purpose. It's a powerful emotion and difficult to ignore. And because
Yeah.
it is a gift, it will help us to understand opportunities to work to change the world or your family situation or your work situation for the better. Because I think when you get angry, it's because you're so interested in defending something that you really love.
Hmm. Yeah, and like all of God's gifts, we're pretty good at messing with them
Oh,
and using them in the wrong way, right?
mm-hmm.
I mean, that's why anger is dangerous, right?
Yeah.
It's because it does want, as you said earlier, it does want to be in charge. It likes to be in charge,
Oh, it does.
and it likes to keep you stuck right there.
Glenn,
So,
doesn't it also mean that you don't have to be vulnerable? Because you can let your anger surface, and then anger is emotion, and an emotion you can grab onto. But it's a lot harder to say, that really hurt my feelings, and show vulnerability versus, I'm so mad that you did this. I mean, that gives you a sense of control where the other causes you to need to show some humility and some vulnerability.
that's a really powerful insight, and I think that's part of the Christian life too, is being able to get to be in a place where we can ask forgiveness, to be in a place where we can have other people ask us for forgiveness, and understand that this is the path forward. Anger doesn't want you to go down that path at all.
And you talk about a path, Glenn, and I think that's brilliant because there's a progression. And you talk about this in the book where you can start as an annoyance. You just got annoyed with something. That's a one-off. But then it might happen again. Now you're irritated. Then all of a sudden you have an anger surge, and you go, "Ooh, where'd that come from?" And then it involves persistent anger, and then you're chronically outraged, and then you're just a mess.
Yeah. And eventually you get to what just pure rage, which is flat out complete loss of control. And we talk about road rage, for example. That's just kind of a minor example. I've known, and I was a person who worked pretty hard on rage, used it as fuel, but it's an incredibly destructive kind of way to live, not only for yourself, but for lots of people around you.
And that switch, when it gets flipped and it comes on quickly, that's when seems like the most damage gets done.
Yes, and some of that damage will be damage you regret the rest of your life. Right? I mean,
couldn't agree more.
Just enormously, something that takes only seconds to happen, and then years and years of regret. Right? Very tough.
Yeah, the old "I wished I hadn't said that. I wish I could take that back." I think that's reacting too quickly to your anger, which was nothing we should be doing.
No, and that's part of the problem. And I've tried to break in the book a model of using anger as an alert signal. That's what it is. That's what it's for. But then the next step is discernment. Okay, am I perceiving something correctly? That's a big deal. And then what should we do about this? Is this something that I need to take care of, respond to? Is this something more of a community or the body of Christ responds to and takes care of? Or is this one so big that our only option is to go to God and lay it there and say, "God, this horrible injustice is here. I'll do my part, but you have to use your enormous power here." And so that discernment stage is really important. And like for the young man who just loses his control really fast, they're skipping over the discernment stage entirely, right? It's that guy said something that made me mad, and now I will punch him in the nose, right? 2 microseconds of discernment, maybe, and not well done. So that's really the challenge: is alert, and then discernment, and then choosing how to act. And this takes time, and I think this is why God's description of himself as being slow to anger, which I chose to use as the title of the book. That's really what this is: to slow it down enough so that anger doesn't rule you. It's in its proper place.
And I'm glad you cited Exodus 34:6, that God is slow to anger, because I know that when I get triggered, Glenn, and you might have gone through this yourself, it's almost as if you're neurologically hijacked, because your blood pressure goes up and your heartbeat races, and then whatever's going to come out of your mouth next is likely something you're going to regret.
Right, and you said there that I might have experienced. I just did yesterday.
Okay.
I mean, okay,
all right.
It's just not right. We all have this. I think some people are just more practiced, but everybody can have those kind of anger moments for sure.
Yeah. We're going to take a little break and come right back. Dr. Glenn Brooke is my guest. His book is Slow to Anger, Redeeming Anger as the Gift It's Meant to Be. We'll be right back. We carry each other's burdens. Please know you can bring us your prayer concerns and we will pray. Share your prayer requests with the Faith Radio team by texting or calling 877-933-2484, or share your prayer requests with the Faith Radio staff and listeners at myfaithradio.com. Welcome back to the show. Dr. Glenn Brooke is my guest. His book is Slow to Anger, Redeeming Anger as the Gift It's Meant to Be. That's just hitting on a couple cylinders in my brain today, because I have had history of being a little bit of a hothead from time to time, and I don't like it. And oftentimes when I become a hothead, I end up saying things I wished I could take back, but usually it's too late. So right before the break, we were talking about this model: alert, discern, act. And he talks about that. When anger strikes, that's the alert. That's the 5-alarm fire that's gone off. Then you have a chance to discern and then to act. And I think that's a good model. I've heard pause, pray, proceed. I've heard other things like it, in as much as don't race to something that's going to cause regret.
Yeah, pause, pray, proceed is a good one. I wish I could say I'm consistently doing praying at that point, but at least giving yourself space to try to do a sermon, right? The old advice that I got when I was a kid is, well, count to 10,
Right.
or in my case, maybe count to 1,000.
Mm-hmm.
But right, but the point is create some space. I mean, one of the things that I've done successfully to help people with that, especially some young men, is to try to, in that moment, pay more attention to like the smells and the sounds and the sights around you, because when that anger thing happens, you get so hyper focused on something. You need to get out of that hyper focus so you can stay calm. But if, like, I was in a coffee shop, I'll say, "Can you hear the espresso machine going?" Just as a
Sure.
way to get them to get out of that hyper focus, which is not in a good, healthy place.
Mm-hmm. Glenn, as believers, shouldn't we just reserve our anger in life for things that matter? Sometimes I have to ask myself, does this matter right now? And my answer is emphatically no. But there are
And
things
sometimes,
that do matter.
well, there are, and you're right. Sometimes what we should do is just laugh at stuff, right? We are a silly species.
Yes, yes, we are.
Sometimes that's the right answer. It's just to laugh at our goofiness and de-escalate any kind of tension in the situation.
Mm.
But yes, if something matters, then we should be angry. That should tell us that it matters, and then we still have to decide, given ourselves enough space, what's the right response here.
You point out in the book about the things that should induce some response in us. A person made in the image of God is being abused. An individual is treated unjustly. A set of rules is being broken. A covenant's being broken. Something which does not promote peace with God. So there are things that we should have our antenna up for, that we go, this is an opportunity for some righteous anger.
Yeah, I like the famous scene that people refer to in the Bible where Jesus takes this whip of cords and he clears out the money lenders and the people selling animals and stuff. I look at that and I see a pattern where Jesus is very, very angry when anyone is interfering with someone else's ability to worship, someone else's ability to understand God correctly. And I mean, my understanding is where those people had set up shop was the only place that Gentiles were allowed to come in and pray. So they were interfering with prayer, and that's what Jesus was really angry about.
You also talk in the book about some ungodly responses when we're angry, and that is things like coveting, lying, vengeance, violence,
Yep.
theft. I mean, boy, there's no good side to an uncontrolled, unbridled anger that leads to sin.
Right. I think that's why there's so many cautions. Paul says, "Be angry, but do not sin. Don't let
Mm-hmm.
the sun go down in your anger." Right. Get rid of anger, he says, and there's a specific kind of anger that's meant there in the Greek. But there is an awful lot in the Bible about the problem of anger and how to work with it. Part of the reason I wrote the book is because I think the simplistic answer that says, "Oh, well, you should never be angry," is actually not helpful, because it has a purpose. It is a gift. You just need to use it correctly and not let it rule you that way.
Mm. And I think most of us have memorized Galatians 5, the fruits of the Spirit. When you think
Mm-hmm.
of self-control, that's always one that is last in the list, and it's oftentimes the one that makes me go, that's something I got to be working on every day.
You and me, brother.
Okay, all right, we're of like mind here. So Let's talk about godly responses when we're acting with self-control. Things like speak the truth and soft answers turn away wrath. Your turn.
Yeah. Serving others is one of the things that is a godly response.
Mm-hmm.
Where we can, we promote systems that are about justice. Turning the other cheek when we're insulted is just a classic and very, very hard to do. I don't think that's limited to young men or old men. I think that's just a proud people have a hard time turning the other cheek. But overlooking offenses, forgiving those that you can't overlook, that's a godly response.
It is.
Yeah, and certainly intercession is a really important one. I recently was thinking about the wonderful scene in The Lord of the Rings where Sam and Frodo were trying to climb Mount Doom so they could throw the ring into the fire, the only place where that horrible thing can be destroyed. And Frodo stumbles and can't go on, and Sam says, "Well, I can't carry the ring, but I can carry you," and picks Frodo up and carries him. And that to me is a great picture of what this kind of godly intercession is. I'm taking the problem to the only place where the solution exists. In this case, not the fires of Mount Doom, but the throne of God, the altar of all grace.
No.
So intercession is a really powerful response to where we see a gap between what should be and what is.
Glenn, when we think of anger, and if we apply it to all the things that are broken in the world, we're never going to not be angry. And that's something I think anger wants, is to rule us. And if anger is ruling us, we're not going to think so much about God's sovereignty and patience.
Yeah, I mean, one of the sad things in my lifetime, I think, is so much news is nationalized, and we hear much more national news than we do local news, frankly. And it's God who rules over nations, not us, right? I mean, some people have governing responsibilities, but it is God who's responsible for ruling over nations and the rulers of those nations. And we can't change anybody's heart, but God changes someone's heart, right?
Absolutely.
And you mentioned vengeance, however tempting
Yeah.
it is, and however deserving that person might be of your vengeance, God says he reserved vengeance to himself, right? Vengeance is mine. So only he can do it without sin.
Yeah, that's very wise. So, Glenn, when Proverbs say that a soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. Okay, let's say you come at me and you're angry, and what you say to me feels really personal. What do I do? Because now I'm a little bit feeling like I'm in a counterattack mode. I gotta defend myself to survive.
Well, if I had a perfect formula, I probably would have included it in the book or sold it somehow, But I think part of it is to recognize there's more going on here than just me and you, or me and this other person.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things which has been helpful to me is to not bite back really hard, but rather to consciously use softer language, reduce the volume in my voice, and so forth. Those kind of things have helped. Again, I wish I had, like, here are the 3 things you do. Perfect. It will work every time. I don't know that. There's often stuff going on when people are angry at you that is way beyond you, not just about what happened in this moment.
Right.
And so I think we try with gentleness and be very careful in our response, be open-handed and continue to try to make it a loving situation. I mean, the definition of gentleness is strength under control.
Amen.
You're not being a doormat. You're using all your strength to stay under control. That's what gentleness is.
So, Glenn, union rules say I've got to quote G.K. Chesterton when I have you on. So when he was asked, what's wrong with the world, G.K. Chesterton said, I am. What about when you're angry with yourself?
Yeah. Self-directed anger can be so destructive, and it's very easily abused. Because anger just wants you. I personalize anger, right? Going back to Genesis 4. Um, you must rule over it. I mean, it's an
Hmm.
it,
Yeah.
um, and it wants you to misinterpret what's going on here, right? You may have an accurate assessment that yeah, you're not where you need to be, and it makes you angry because that's the gap. But that doesn't mean that God doesn't love you. If God is disciplining you, for example, and you're not happy about it, but that might be because you get angry. Well, you're just misinterpreting God's loving intent here in that sense. So I think you still follow this kind of model. Okay, anger is a signal. It tells me something's going on. I need to discern. In this case, we often really do need to pray. God, tell me what's going on. I feel this way. How should I be understanding this? What
Mm.
should be going on? Right. And then be very slow to just beat yourself up or to abuse yourself or to lash out at others because you're mad at yourself, right? I mean, be very, very slow in this situation. It takes time. And our ability to perceive things correctly is pretty bad much of the time. So we just need to be humble in our ability to interpret the signal.
Hmm. Glenn, I'm mad that we have to take a break. I'm angry that we have to take a break because I'd like to just keep talking. But these are the rules of radio. So we're going to take a short break and be right back with Dr. Glenn Brooke. His book is Slow to Anger, Redeeming Anger as the Gift It's Meant to Be. I'll be right back. We're back talking about anger today and with Dr. Glenn Brooke. His book is called Slow to Anger, Redeeming Anger as the Gift It's Meant to Be. And Glenn, I was thinking about just this week, like as early as today, feeling irritated and short-tempered. And I was laughing to myself because I thought, well, I'm talking to Glenn today about anger. And yet today I'm feeling irritated and short-tempered. How can I look at my anger history? How can I make sense of it and turn it into something profitable for me?
So I have a short chapter of the book which is trying to learn from your anger history, and this is painful because it just requires some accuracy in writing down some stuff maybe you don't like. But the goal is just to reflect on your experiences and think about what kinds of things, when have you been angry, and then maybe what were some of the triggers? What kind of things made you impatient? Are there any patterns that you can recognize? And sometimes it's as simple as, well, I just didn't get enough sleep. The
Yeah.
kids were sick and I was up in the night. Or I, I ate a whole bunch of sugar that I know I shouldn't eat, and it just made me jumpy. And then I had the blood sugar crash, and not not an excuse. In my family as a kid, we were told excuses are lies we tell ourselves. But
Hmm.
but understanding those kind of patterns, and those can be the short, like, well, I'm irritated because I'm a little short of sleep. That okay, maybe that's legit. Then there are the longer patterns, right? For me, battling anger since I was very young, I can pick out some underlying patterns. Not like, oh, I need psychotherapy because of all this trauma. It's not even that. It's just I can see certain patterns that tended to make me more prone to anger and especially more prone to skipping that discernment step and lashing out.
It's so interesting because the word patterns is something I think all of us can put into the formula and say, let's just look back and just try to recognize the pattern that we have that produces the anger in our spirits. Because there's been times when I'm sure my anger has felt kind of good to me. I think, yeah, they got a dose of me today.
Oh, that's the number one thing for me is it does feel good,
It
right?
does, unfortunately.
Um, and especially on very personal things, right? Um, Something very personal to you or a personal encounter when you're angry, you let them have it, right? You didn't cower down and all the rest. That it's not a it's not the right kind of feeling, but
Right.
I think everyone listening knows what we're talking about. Boy, that just felt so satisfying to get that zinger in there,
Hmm.
right? Yeah, we love that. So yeah, that's significantly a challenge. And that can be one of the patterns that you recognize, as you point out.
And I should probably every night go to bed thanking God for his grace that kept things from getting worse. Because who knows what I could have said or done, or embarrassingly so, not really brought the fragrance of Christ to the conversation, but maybe something different.
True. I told people for years that I'm really envious of the ones who say they have an inner voice, because I have committees with subcommittees, and they
hmm
just, they're saying crazy stuff all the time. Like, he said that to you. He deserves it. You should punch him in the face. It's like, well, where did that come from? Part of maturity for me is just learning how to ignore the various subcommittees and their stupid things, right? But um, I, yeah, we should be thankful. I mean, if everything I ever thought to say had come out, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Well, I think several people would have killed me along the way, but literally in my case, but not just figuratively. But yeah, we have to that self-control thing, a lot of it. I think James has a comment or two about control of the tongue.
He does. And I want to go back to the model where the anger is the alert signal that says, uh-oh, something's wrong. And then you move into the discernment phase. And that's the phase I want to talk about just a little bit right now, because where is my discernment going to come from? Hopefully the Lord, hopefully from his word, but also should there be a committee, a council of people that we love and trust that can speak truth into our life. Because what's coming next is acting, and I don't know how much time we have for the discernment part.
Well, I don't either. We'll just go ahead. I think the part of the framing of discernment is really to have the right standards, right? Are we angry about the right kinds of things? And we talked about some of them earlier, like a person made in the image of God is being abused, right?
Yes,
That's it,
that's clear.
right? But the standards are things that we can take from the Bible, for example, the Sermon on the Mount, Ten Commandments, Jesus' statement to his disciples in John, a new commandment I give you, that you love one another as I have loved you. Um, the Colossians 3 chapter has a really nice outline of how we should live, for example, with one another in the church and relate to other people outside the church or who are not yet believers. These are the things that inform us about whether we are discerning things correctly, and then, is this something that it's not consistent with the Ten Commandments. It's not consistent with the great Shema to love the Lord with all your heart, all your mind, and all your soul, all your strength. If it's inconsistent with those, okay, maybe this is legit. Maybe this is something. Now, is it something I do? Is it something the church takes care of, or community takes care of, my broader family takes care of, or is this something we take to God, throne of grace? So, I said that before, but this whole discernment and then deciding what is the right action is really important. And that's, again, slowness. Um, we live in a culture that really rewards the quick comeback and that kind of thing. And well, I think a lot of the Christian life is more gentleness, that strength under control, and being very careful with our words and our actions.
Glenn, I think it's important that we are reminding each other that there are falsehoods when it comes to anger, and that we don't want to believe the lies, and of which there are many. And I know when sometimes people I know who are prone to be angry also seem to isolate, and then they have outbursts, and then they go away for a while, and they don't stay connected as well as other people, because anger is such a volatile tool, and they seem to use it all the time. Do you see the truth in that?
I do. I think that when Satan wants to destroy a man, he isolates him.
Amen. That's for sure.
I don't think that's limited to men, but I think men are particularly prone to that, because for many men, and I've been there, isolation just feels a lot better. It's so much easier than being in community.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
much easier. And And even when we're sort of with people, we're sort of play acting, being with people, right? That level of vulnerability you talk about is pretty important. And again, this is where I think knowing Christ and being confident that the love of Christ is carrying us, that we are never abandoned or orphaned, that's what gives us the strength to be vulnerable and to actually open up, um, to say things like I've written in this book.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, this book is not written by a guy who's got it all figured out and never had a problem with anger and still figuring it out.
Right.
And that's encouraging. This conversation's encouraging for that reason.
Yeah. Glenn, do you think it's possible for a Christian to be angry and not sin?
Well, I think Paul would not have written what he wrote if that were not a possibility.
Amen. Yeah.
Is that a double negative? I have to be careful about those things. But yeah, I think the, if Jesus could be angry and not sin, if Moses can be angry and at least not all the time sin, yeah, it's got to be possible. It's a high standard. It's a
Yeah.
really high standard.
Yeah, it is. And do you think men have more problems with anger than women?
I think men have different problems with women, at least the ones we see most often.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the angriest people I have ever met were women.
Okay.
Um, I just think that our very natures and the things that we're sort of, I'll say, optimized around, and our culture pushes us into, drive us to express anger in slightly different ways. Um, Bitterness and is related to chronic anger, and the things that make men and women bitter tend to be a little different. But
Mm-hmm.
um, not being a woman, um, there are ranges of things that I have no personal experience with, and so I'm very careful when I speak this way. But I certainly can say both men and women have major challenges with anger.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see anything in the Bible that says, "Oh, and this is only an issue for the guys."
Right. I feel like I want to, Wyatt, I feel like I want to do a 5-person survey. I just don't know what the question would be, but
Well, it's allowed. Maybe we can take the break. Think
Yeah, well,
about one.
yeah, if we can come up with one.
Yeah,
But
man.
I feel like there's a lot of people that want to weigh in on this topic
We'll have to get creative
because
here
we
at
have,
the break.
I think we've poked the bear a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, because just talking to Glenn about anger makes me think about my anger, my irritation, the things that annoy me, the things that I address that I probably should just let go and go, this is not important because I reserve my anger in life for things that matter. And this is not one of those things that matter.
Well said.
All right, we're going to take a break and be right back with Dr. Glenn Brooke. He's written a book called Slow to Anger, Redeeming Anger as the Gift It's Meant to Be. Be right back. Welcome is a word said universally all over the world. Every language on the planet has their own way of making a friendly greeting. At Faith Radio, when we welcome, we really mean it. Learn more about us by requesting a free welcome pack gift. Text the word welcome to 877-933-2484 or visit myfaithradio.com to request your welcome pack today. And a warm welcome to you. My guest today is Dr. Glenn Brooke. We're talking about anger. I think this is getting the attention of a lot of people today. And in your book, Glenn, you have profiled 3 different dialogues you had with people, and I read all of them. And the one I think that would really serve this audience well would be the conversation and progression you had with Sophie.
The most difficult one.
I picked the most difficult one, but I think it's going to have the most impact. Would you walk us through that?
Sure. And this is anonymized. This is based on a real situation, but I changed enough details to try to protect her identity.
Sure.
But Sophie, very angry mother of a teenage daughter, Naomi, who was also very, very angry. And Sophie had recently come through a nasty divorce, and adultery was at the heart of that divorce. And had lots of anger at her ex-husband. for what had been done, what had been said, how things had been handled or not handled. And unfortunately, the church that they were going to, the congregation somewhat began to ostracize Sophie and her daughter. And they felt judged. They felt like uh, they were being treated like third class Christians. So instead of getting kind of the warm support and encouragement they were hoping for, they just kind of were pushed out a little bit. And so they had anger about that. Um, so that's the outline of it. And I will tell you, this is a situation that I know is still, Sophie is, the real life Sophie is still working through this, the unforgiveness. But but the unforgiveness is what in the end we felt that God was pointing Sophie and Naomi to, that until you can forgive, you're not going to get past all this. And I know that the ex-husband, is not doesn't think he did anything wrong. I mean, it's a really sad, difficult situation, but the level of forgiveness here was crucial. And part of the reason I included the story is because it isn't an instant resolution. It's
Mm-hmm.
not something that just got taken care of in one conversation with me or one prayer, that sort of thing, right? They're still struggling with it, right? They've seen the evidence of God's grace, but it's still a battle for them.
Glenn, can I read a line that Sophie said, which really stuck
Sure.
out? She said, "Please don't lecture me about forgiving Mike. I can't forgive him," she said louder, beginning to pace. "He hasn't repented. He's gotten away with it all and left us a mess. He's not suffering like he deserves to be."
Yes.
Exactly how do
I
you work through that anger?
uh, uh, you do a lot of intercession for Sophie. And in that conversation, it was actually a composite of several conversations, but um, I was using one of my practices to help me in these tense moments. I picture, and I describe this in the book, I picture the cross of Christ between me and Sophie, not not the sanitized thing, but the actual cross, which has splinters and nail holes and blood, um, and flies, because anytime there's blood, there's going to be flies. Um, and the idea that I have in my imagination is that everything I'm hearing from Sophie has to come through the cross so that I hear the correct thing and I'm able to really understand it. And anything that I'm saying is getting filtered by the cross too. So she's only getting what's really good for her, and helpful and God honoring. And that's an imagination tool, which is really helpful for me in stressful situations
Yeah.
like this. But and it's and I think what allowed me, by God's grace, to understand the issue is forgiveness here. The very fact that she went there tells me that she knows it too, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and again, I wish I could say, oh, I said the right things and everything was magically great, and they found another church that's super, and that those aren't true. That's not where that is.
Mm-hmm. Glenn, you also say in the book, nowhere in the Bible are we commanded to fix people because fixing people is God's business. We're commanded to love.
Yeah. Uh, yes, I have challenged any number of people on occasion, get your concordance out and find the verse that says that how to fix people. And it's not there. It's not there. And love is expensive. In Sophie's case and Naomi's case, her daughter, love is very expensive for them, right? But the cost of not forgiving is this intolerable burden that they just have to lay down. And they're not designed to carry this.
So
So
let's just think biblically about anger in our time remaining, Glenn. And I'm curious how does anger and fear fit together? Because it seems like they're cousins. Like they show up at the same picnic in the summertime. There's fear, there's anger.
yes, and there aren't as many verses about anger as there are fear.
Mm-hmm.
What is it, 360 sometimes in the Bible you can find, do not be afraid, do not fear.
Right.
But I think that you're right. There is a close connection between these powerful, powerful emotions. I I I have not plumbed the depths of this. I don't even know how to explain it. I just can tell you that through some personal observations and experience, people who learn to overcome fears are much better at dealing with the challenge of anger and bitterness. There's some kind of a connection there. Maybe you have some ideas. I'm all ears if you do. But they tend to travel in the same car.
Yeah, they do. They do. Why is anger so controlling and so powerful? We're in the lightning round now, so you don't have to answer. You don't have to make these answers long. Just sort of throw out what you have on the top of your head.
I think that, the corrupted nature of our bodies and our spirits means that we very easily let things rule us, and anger is quite good at ruling us.
Okay, what do we do to keep our anger in check?
As much as possible, you put everything in front of God and you say, "Help me understand this. What's the right response here?"
I like that. What about anger and freedom? What do they have in common?
Anger, you were breaking up. Sorry.
Oh,
Anger.
what does anger and freedom have in common? Because if you've let go of anger, boy, you're going to have freedom in a way maybe you've never known.
Yeah, so they're somewhat antonyms, right? They're not synonyms. I mean, they don't go together that way. But people who are a slave to anger are definitely not free.
No.
And I think God wants us to be free. That's why love is the basis for freedom, not anger. Anger doesn't rescue anything. It just points out the problem that needs to be rescued.
So are you saying, Glenn, that if I'm going to enjoy freedom, that means I'm not going to have to spend a lot of time at managing my anger, because there's a chance I might be free from my anger?
I hope that someday before I die, I'll be free from anger, but I don't
Okay.
personally think that's going to happen for me. And I don't blame God. I think that's because of just the particular challenges I have, but I think I'm in good company. Many of us, not all, but many of us really, really struggle with anger issues.
Mm-hmm. So let's just say anger has that purpose, it has an intended purpose, but we should learn how to be slow to anger.
Yeah. And I think it's worth learning it, because the consequence of not learning it is a life of regret.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a Bible passage or two when it comes to anger that you have floating around in your head that you go to?
One I go to is Galatians 5:23, where he talks about gentleness and self-control.
Oh, yeah.
Against such things there is no law.
Love that.
Right? There is nothing that will block whatever you want to pour into gentleness and self-control. Nothing will block it once it's there. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And then another one, especially earlier in my life, that was really meaningful, was from Psalm 110. The Lord is at your right hand. He will shatter kings on the day of his wrath. And the reason that's meaningful to me is because it's just a reminder that all those things where it's about kings and governments and stuff I can't directly work on, God will take care of it.
Mm-hmm. So, Glenn, how would we make sense of Proverbs 22:24 that says, "Make no friendship with a man given to anger, nor go with a wrathful man"? All of my friends have certain levels of anger, so I don't want to dump all my friends today.
Yeah, I think that the meaning there for me, the way I would handle that one at least, is to say, recognize that people who are just letting their anger run wild, who have no self-control, that they're getting to that level of rage and
Sure.
wrath, that's just the bad company that will infect you.
Perfect.
Yeah. Keep the cross between you and them. If your ministry is to be with them, just understand how much you're going to have to guard your heart.
Great. Glenn, thank you so much for doing the show. It's been a delight meeting you.
My privilege. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day. Dr. Glenn Brooke has been my guest. His book is called Slow to Anger, Redeeming Anger as the Gift It's Meant to Be. We're going to take a little break. When we come back, Dr. Christopher Yuan is going to join the program. We'll be right back. Thanks for listening. Programming like this is made available through your support. Information available at myfaithradio.com.